So over the last few weeks, I've been rewatching some great Frasier episodes. It's been really exciting. It's really one of my favorite sitcoms ever. And it aired on NBC from in the 90s. So from 1993 to 2004, to be precise. So it was quite a long run. And this time I've been paying attention a bit more to the costume design of the whole show. So I felt like taking a closer look. I discovered the show's costume designer was called Audrey Bansmer. That's it. So let's try to get inside her head a bit and analyze a bit the brothers' looks. So let's hop on Pinterest because that's obviously the best destination for photos like these. So let's start with this picture, for example, just to introduce the main characters. So on the right, we have Frasier, played by Kelsey Grammer, and on the left, Niles, played by David Hyde Pierce. And why I think it's interesting to analyze the style in this whole show and between the brothers as well is because the characters themselves were known to appreciate good style and stylish suits. For example, they mention Armani suits in the show, that they like to wear those. Apparently, I researched a bit online, and apparently the production team sourced many of the outfits from Neiman Marcus. But I'd say especially Niles. I don't know why the Pinterest is doing that weird rainbow thing there, but apparently Niles, or especially Niles, I'd say, is like a prime example of wearing the Armani aesthetic well. We'll get into the details in just a bit. Whereas Frasier wore apparently a bit more suits from Hugo Boss or Calvin Klein and Xenia and brands like these. But high-end brands in any case from the 90s. Let me know if you have any more intel on what other brands they wore, but at least these were brought up in my research. Now let's look at some pictures of Niles's wardrobe a bit more closely. So let's start here. This is probably like a promotional picture for season 2. He looks so smug in this and pretentious, but obviously it's very much a caricature of what the character really is. There's so much more depth to him than just this pretentious facade. Just some initial notes on the tailoring. We can see it's a double-breasted suit. Sometimes he wears like a 4-button configuration, sometimes 6. The tailoring is quite relaxed. It has this Italian vibe to it, and you can also see the 40s influence behind it because of the wide peak lapels, and this oversized feel with the padded shoulders, wide shoulders, and the dropped waistline and long jackets, which I find very interesting. That Armani kind of brought it back during the 90s. Maybe some other brands as well, but at least with these Armani suits, it was like iconic from this era that they constructed this sort of suits. We can see in terms of the ties and the shirts, the dress shirts, often quite a lot of stripes, I'd say, for Niles. The spread of the collar was never quite wide, but the ties, the prints in the ties were quite crazy. Lots of geometric prints. The tonality of the colors feels very vintage right now because this hasn't fully come back to fashion. It's about to come, and we can already see bits and pieces of this. At least I can see here in Paris sometimes I can run into these sort of ties that they're slowly coming back, but still it does feel a bit vintage at the moment. The same thing here, very dropped, this angle in the lapels. These interesting combinations with these dress shirts and a printed tie with kind of these very earthy tones, shall we say. That's a good way of describing both Frasier and Niles' wardrobe. It's very a wintry show. And this one is quite beautiful. I like the gray, very business-like, very Wall Street vibes. I like it. But this, 6 buttons there. Here, also, the color of the tie, you wouldn't see that very often these days. Here as well. But you can see the fabrics are of very good quality, like wool. some silk blends in the ties for sure. And here we can see him without a jacket, with these crazy printed ties and his suspenders, which are quite famous. It was very characteristic of his character that he never wore belts, but these suspenders. I feel like in this picture he looks like he could belong to like a mafia from the 40s in Italy or something like that. But now here we can compare Frasier and Niles' tailoring a bit more. Now you can see how oversized Niles' suits were, how the pants or the trousers were so wide. It brings this very interesting sweep into the whole look because it's so oversized, and it almost looks very comical. I mean, this is a sitcom, so it's meant to be comical, and throughout the show, the costumes that Niles wears and the suits, because it is so oversized, it does really amplify the physical comedy that he does so brilliantly throughout the show. So it does bring out this dimension of humor also in how he's dressed. Now, if we look at Frasier here, a bit darker tone sometimes in terms of the colors, and most often single-breasted, whereas Niles almost always double-breasted. And let's look at another picture. So this is from the same day, like press pictures, and here we can see it's actually a brown suit with a brown shirt, and a brown tie with some shine in the tie as well. A much more fit. Can we say that? A bit more preppy, a bit more Ivy League. This picture we already looked at, but just to point out, here we can see one important element of Frasier's wardrobe, which is the cardigans. So he wore a lot more sweaters and cardigans than Niles did. Here, this is a slightly different angle, I'd say, because this is from a bit of the later seasons of the 100th show, we can say here. A bit more like a crisper tailoring, crisper fabrics, very, earthy colors. There's not much pops of color. It's more the variation in their suits and outfits are done mostly through the textures. So here you can see the sheen on the tie, but the black, dark, deep black of the suit with the contrast of the white. So the variation is really comes through those details. It doesn't shout at your face. Here, this is from the first or second season probably, because he had the longer hair there. Striped shirts again, a cardigan, and notched lapels with this tweed jacket. That's very Frasier here as well. Same thing, cardigan, notched lapels, tweed, tartan jacket. Not a full suit here, so suit separates. And here, without a jacket, the cardigan once again. But now moving on to the more casual side of Frasier and Niles' wardrobes. Niles we see almost exclusively in suits all the time. But towards the later seasons, we do see him some other outfits as well. Here we can see him in a knit polo sweater like this. Frasier wears these almost throughout the show as well, these similar kinds of cashmere pullovers, etc. Here's one picture of Niles in this whole full linen look. I can't really remember which episode this is from, but with his pet parrot on his shoulder. Can't remember what his name was though. It was maybe Poppy or something like that. I'd have to check what it's called. And with the great episode where the parrot attaches to his head during this dinner party, is just an amazing episode. Hilarious. Sometimes we see him in these dressing gowns, and just a couple of instances in a t-shirt, which indeed makes him look, I'd say, in a way kind of naked, because we always see him in a costume, or a suit, I mean. And, here he still has his suspenders up, I think, or on. I think this is the episode where Niles moves to this bachelor pad when Maris takes all his money or something like that. And he's just very disheveled in this whole scene, as you can see. But yeah, just a great example of where right now The t-shirt is considered such a modern classic, and people can look put together in a t-shirt, but and it can look great if it's really made from a good quality fabric and it fits well and everything. But here in Niles' case, for someone who always wears suits, it does look like an undergarment more. And it was interesting because there was this other episode that I just watched on season 8, episode 13, where Sliding Frasiers was the episode, where he walks into the Cafe Nervosa in the beginning of the episode, and he's wearing this t-shirt with a picture of him and Niles imprinted on it. So they finally got together and they're completely in love in that moment. And he says this line in that moment in the episode, something along the lines of, "I've never worn an undergarment in public before," or something like that. Which then reminded me of this point that is so true. The t-shirt was originally only an undergarment, and it wasn't socially acceptable to wear one out and about just like that. So in this episode, he's still inside when he's wearing this. But in that episode, I feel like that's one of the rare times when he's actually out and about in a t-shirt. And they do make a comment about it because it does look a bit weird. And yeah, there's obviously a comical point to it as well. But yeah, Frasier, we definitely see him in much more casual clothes throughout the seasons, I'd say. We see him in jeans, sweatpants, sweatshirts, sneakers, not just when they're playing squash or something, like squash outfits we see from both of them, but during weekends, for example, Frasier, we can see him wearing something like this. Oh, this is very unrelated, but I just wanted to throw this in here because it's just one of the funniest episodes I remember of from Frasier. It's called Door Jam, toward the later seasons. Just pure comedic gold. I love the show so much. And actually, the costume designer, Audrey Bensmer, she also won an Emmy for the costume design of the whole show. I don't know which season, actually, I didn't check, but yeah, at some point she did win an Emmy. Okay, well, now as some final thoughts, I'd say sumptuous is the right word to describe this whole visual identity of the show. But it's still not too extravagant either. It's something very cozy, but not too relaxed, still tailored. Just a great mix of having this formality in the tailored looks, but still this soft and warm side to it. In terms of the suits in the show, it's not my favorite type of tailoring, definitely. I could have even considered it quite hideous a couple of years ago, but I'm starting to warm up to it again, which proves that the fashion cycles are cycling. Our eyes are getting used to these sort of colors and silhouettes again. I often say that I would have really liked to live in the 1950s. That's definitely my favorite era of them all. But when I look at these movies and TV shows from the 1990s, it does give me some nostalgia as well. So I'd say it comes as a very close second. The 90s just seemed like such a nice moment in the history of humankind. If I think of the state of technology at the time, what kind of technological advancements had been done and hadn't been done at that point. Now in hindsight, we can always compare. And the international mobility that you still had, and the fashion. There's a lot to love in the 90s, because as we can see in this show, suits were still worn much more in professional contexts, for example, even though this whole casual wear still lived alongside it. So the same kind of outfits that are popular right now with the t-shirts and jeans and sneakers, people already wore that in the 90s. But in professional context, often you still had lots of suits. And as I am someone who loves sartorial, the whole art of sartorial suits and tailoring, it feels like it was a kind of a perfect mix of the both of the worlds coexisting in our landscape. Whereas now we still see suits in big cities especially, you can see suits, but it's still rarer these days than it must have been in the 90s. But I guess that's all for now. So I'll see you in the next one. Bisous!